Watch Whimsy. Like. Subscribe. Ring that bell. Hi there, I'm Katie, and this is Watch Whimsy, where I review wonderful and wonky women's watches in a variety of price ranges. Today, I'm not going to necessarily review any specific watch, but I'm going to discuss something that I hear very often when I go to jewelers or ADs or watch stores or anything like that when I'm with my husband. And a lot of times while we've been shopping with them and looking at all kinds of different watches for him, and he's asking me if he should get it, and I'm like, yeah, you should get it. A lot of them are like, I'm really surprised at how supportive you are of your husband buying watches and how interested you are and how knowledgeable you are. Most wives or girlfriends aren't interested. And I hear that more often than not when I go into a new place. And it doesn't surprise me. For a long time, I wasn't interested. I had no desire to learn anything about watches. I had no desire to even bother shopping for watches. And I'm going to discuss that a little bit today. One of the things to begin with are YouTube videos. YouTube videos are fine. There are lots of really good watch channels. There are some that are a bit annoying to watch. And when you are interested, when a man is interested or a woman is interested in buying a watch, it's really common for us to go to YouTube and look for a review. That's why I started this channel, because there aren't very many review places for women's watches. So you're deciding, I'm going to buy a watch, and your wife or girlfriend who really isn't interested loves you. So they sit with you and they watch the 7 or 8 watch videos about the exact same watch. And you decide, I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger on this. And you go to the AD, she comes with you, you try it on, you really like it, or they don't have it more often than not if it's like a steel Rolex sports watch or something. And you decide to buy it, so you order it. And when you get the call that it's your turn or that your watch is available for you to come pick up, what do? You're excited. It's the end of the day, so you can't go in today. You sit down, and your wife or girlfriend sits down with you, and you watch the exact same 7 videos about that watch again. Now, you might be really excited, and you might enjoy watching that video again. Your girlfriend or wife is not going to be very interested in that. A lot of the time, the voiceovers for reviews are slow and calm and elegant and talking about how luxurious this watch is, and this is the history of the company and blah, 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 and yada, yada, yada. And for someone who's not interested, it's not interesting. It's not interesting at all. That's not the way to get her interested in watches. It's not completely your fault, of course. It's probably not even mostly your fault. But when she goes to the store with you to pick up your watch, she browses because she's waiting. And she looks at all the women's watches that are available, and none of them strike her fancy because of the things I'm going to discuss next. There are problems with the watch industry when it comes to the design and manufacture of women's watches. When I ask someone who is a representative of a specific brand, do you have women's watches? Are you going to be releasing any new women's watches? Most of the time, they either say they're going to be releasing a line soon, and then it comes out and it's boring. Or I hear, oh, we have this other line that we consider unisex, which is fine, unisex. But just tell me no. Just tell me no. If you don't design women's watches, just tell me. That's fine. Not every watch company in existence has to design women's watches, just as not every watch company in existence has to make men's watches. There are companies that only make women's watches, and that's fine. So these are the things with the watch companies that do make women's watches that I personally, this is my personal opinion, that they have issues with. The first problem is what I like to call the cookie cutter watch. Cookie cutters are watches that have unnumbered indices. They have a neutral background, like mother of pearl, or it's white, or it's beige, or sometimes gray. They're circular, and they're no larger than 38 millimeters. And if there's any complication at all, it's the date. These are the watches that you will find in most jewelers that carry watches. Sometimes, they'll be slightly different. They won't all look the same. I have a few pictures that I found for examples of cookie cutter watches. They're classic for a reason. This might be a watch that someone may consider should be in each person's collection. You should have just a classic watch with the unnumbered indices and all that. But you don't have to be boring to have the classic look, and I'll talk about that later. This is just lazy designing to me. You just put the indices on there, you put the hands on there, you put a neutral background, and you say, oh, this is a women's watch. Maybe you add, instead of the indices, you have little diamonds around for each number. Yeah, that's a cookie cutter. That's something that everybody does, and it took very little thought for you to design it. And we know that, and that's why we're not interested in that. The second problem is that I think a lot of companies shrink their men's designs and then call it a women's watch. When you shrink a man's watch, that does not make a women's watch. That makes a unisex watch. A women's watch should be designed with women in mind. For example, I'm a writer. I write my books with the demographics of young adult women in mind. That's how I write my books. I consider them. I'm not considering Joe Schmo down the street who watches like Star Trek and Star Wars. That's not my demographic. Now, that person, that Joe Schmo, may pick up my book and read it and really enjoy it. But he wasn't in mind. So there's women who like the big chunky man's watches, and that's fine too. But that watch wasn't designed for them. That's just the way that it is. When an artist designs something, they have a person in mind. They have that person that they imagine wearing that watch. And when you shrink a watch and make no other changes, all you've done is shrink a man's watch. You haven't made a woman's watch. Again, it's lazy designing. The last thing is that more bling does not necessarily make a watch prettier. Don't get me wrong. I love sparkly things. Sparkly things, if I walk past them in the store, I go and I look and I browse and drive my husband and daughter absolutely crazy. I love sparkle. But it doesn't always improve the aesthetics of a watch. It doesn't always make it better. And I have a couple pictures that I'll put in here. It can get to be too much. And one thing that I personally don't like are pave watches. And that means that the entire dial is diamonds and even sometimes the bracelet. There are places in the world where the pave watches do have a place. That place is not on my wrist. I'm not going to be wearing a pave watch. And those watches, they do have women in mind. So, at least there's that. Bravo, you've considered women. That's great. Now let's take the diamonds off and do something that they will be interested in wearing. So these are all the negative things. And one of the things we're taught is that if you're going to present a problem, you should always present a solution as well. If you don't have a solution to the problem, there's no point in bringing it up, right? So I'm going to tell you what we want in a watch. One thing is beautiful complications. You can have lovely, unique background and artistry. The example that I have for you is the Blancpain State of Grace Quantième retrograde. And please forgive me if I slaughtered the pronunciation of any of that. For this watch, there is a day-night indicator, and you can see they've put little diamonds on the dial to reflect stars, I'm thinking. And it has a really unique curvy hand for what is the date indicator. Now, notice that the date indicator isn't just a normal square on the 3 or square on the 6 indicator. It's something that will be different and be a conversation starter. And then you, of course, have the actual clock on the bottom of the watch. Now, it is mother of pearl, but I think in this case, it is fine because they've kind of taken the sky and made that the inspiration for this watch. So the mother of pearl kind of looks like clouds or something else. It's a part of the art. So there's a good reason for it being there. This is a good example. You can see that when they designed this, they thought a woman will love to wear this watch. I would wear this one. It's probably way expensive because it's Blancpain. And for the record, Blancpain is one of the companies that consistently do women's watches very well. The second thing is classic but eye-catching. And I was talking about this a little bit earlier when we were talking about cookie cutter watches. You have the unnumbered indices in the cookie cutter watches, which really kind of limit what you can do with it. There's not a lot of really creative angles you can take. There are, but they're very small. One of the things you can do is actually have, numbers. You can have Arabic numbers. You can have Roman numerals. And with those, you can have different fonts. And you can make it a really strict, serious looking font, or you can have a kind of whimsical font or whatever you want to do with it. But there's so much more you can do if you take the time to actually number the indices. The example I have for this is the Cartier Ballon Bleu. It has the Roman numerals, you can see, the blue hands, which are very different. They're not just the black, straight hands. And then the Ballon Bleu has they all have that kind of curve on the side with the sapphire crown. This is a way that you can have a classic watch that doesn't look like a cookie cutter. It's the way that you can purchase something for your wife or girlfriend and know that she's going to really like it. She's not going to look at it and be like, this watch took no thought. Because if you buy a cookie cutter watch, which is designed by somebody who had no thought for women in mind, that, to me, means that there's not very much thought put into that watch when you purchase it. And maybe it is, maybe your girlfriend will love it, whatever. But for the most part, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm sure a lot of women are concerned, no one wants to wear the same watch that everybody else is wearing. We all want to be different, especially in this world where everyone seems to want to conform to everything. We need to be as unique as we possibly can. There's no reason to be like everyone else. The next thing that we want is unique, but with options. And for this one, I chose the Breguet Rang de Naples. And again, I apologize if I slaughtered the pronunciation. You can see in this picture, this is the one that I really like, but there are 13 variants of this watch. There are 13 different ways that you can purchase this watch, but they all kind of have that same unique design. We like choices. There's also, I've seen in person, one with red numbers and a red strap. I've seen just like classic gold with black numbers. I've seen white gold. They have such a wide variety for this watch. And this is a really nice one. And again, Breguet and Cartier, who we were just looking at, they consistently do women's watches very well. They have good designs with women in mind. Finally, and for the final thing that we want is functional, but not at the expense of good aesthetics. This kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about shrinking the man's watch and saying it's a woman's watch. It's not that way. It's not that way. You can, if you alter the colors, maybe, if you alter the font, maybe, that would be a way to, you're changing the design in some way. I would accept that more than just shrinking it and keeping everything the same. But I digress. You can design a woman's sports watch with women in mind. And that was my first video was on this watch, the Abingdon Co. Marina. And you can see very clearly that it was designed with women in mind. They were not thinking about unisex. They were not thinking about men. They were thinking, what is functional? What will work? What will do the job? And what will look good on that wrist? So I encourage you to see if you can find stuff like that. Now, with all of these complaints and suggestions, you might be asking yourself, well, why the heck is she interested? Why the heck is she making this video? Why does she have a channel about watches if the watch industry is doing everything wrong? First of all, I'll explain to you how I got into watches. I was not interested. My husband had been watching watch videos nonstop for probably over a year. And one day he's down at our AD and he calls me and he says, hey, they have this Rolex Datejust, but the dial is meteorite. And I was like, I don't know, like, how does that even work? And how would that look good? Because, I'm thinking meteorite, like outer space, it's like black and charcoaly or whatever. Didn't really think it would be good. I'm like, send me a picture. So he sends me a picture and it is knockout gorgeous. Meteorite as a dial is amazing. It's different. It's not something that a lot of people have because the materials are very scarce. So even though it was a Datejust and it had those unnumbered indices and just the date, it had that unique property that it was made of meteorite. This is not something that everybody has. So he brought me that watch home and I loved it. I loved this watch. So I started getting a little bit more interested. I started thinking, well, maybe they're not all the same. Maybe not all women's watches are identical or not considered or anything like that. We go to a leap year sale at our local AD and I'm looking around and I see the Frederic Constant section. There's a heartbeat watch. Of course, I had seen the exposed heartbeat in other watches before, but this one, it's actually shaped like a heart, and this one had a double heartbeat on it. And it was at the 12. And actually, I don't know if anyone knows this, but I just recently learned that Frederic Constant was actually the first watch company to put that heartbeat at the 12 o'clock. I fell in love with it immediately. It was a part of the leap year sale, and I was able to buy it. So that watch was the first one I picked out and loved. And from there, I started just treating it like a treasure hunt. It's fun for me now to go in and walk around a store and see if I can find a unique piece among all the women's watches. See if I can find that diamond in the rough. Sometimes I find one. A lot of times I don't. But it's made it a kind of fun and exciting hobby to see what I can find. Unfortunately, a lot of the unique pieces that you will find are more expensive because of the diamonds that they've put in it or the materials they've used or the time it's taken for them to come up with the complications. That's just a part of watches, though. Most of the time, the watches that have had more thought put into the design will be more expensive. And that happens more often than not with women's watches. Now, not always. There are times when a women's watch will be decently priced, and I've found quite a few of those myself. And again, that's just a part of the hunt. As for why I'm making this video, if I think women aren't interested in watches, I hope that having this channel will spark that interest in someone, that they will watch my channel and they'll see, wow, there really are watches that are designed for me that are different. And maybe someone else will have that spark lit and they'll become interested. Also, the watch industry can't change what they don't know is a problem. So that's another reason why I made this video. They, maybe they don't think of it as lazy designing when they shrink a watch, or when they just add diamonds to something, or when they make the cookie cutter. Maybe they don't think of it as lazy designing. Maybe they just, I don't know their thought process when they're making these watches. Maybe it just seems like an afterthought a lot of times. Oh, we haven't done anything for women in a while. What should we do? Oh, let's take this one, and instead of it being 43, let's make it 38. Good. Boom. Done. That also will appeal to men with smaller wrists. And from the channels that I've watched on YouTube, there are quite a few of those who are very excited when there's a 38 millimeter watch made of the design that they are interested in, but couldn't buy before because the size was too large. I think that these issues are easily solved. This year at Watches and Wonders, there were a couple women's watches presented, and they were lovely. Cartier came out with some amazing designs. The one that really sticks out for me was the Cloche de Cartier. It's not by any means the first time they've released this watch, but you go to Chrono 24 and you search for Cloche de Cartier, you can't find it. You can't find really a vintage version of this watch. And they re-released it, and it's so gorgeous. It's way over my budget for buying watches right now. It's in what I would consider the luxury section of my price ranges, but it's beautiful. So I think the universe is telling me to close this up, and I didn't realize I talked for so long, so I'm going to close it up. To conclude this video, I'd just like to say that if you're a woman out there and you like women's watches and you're not just like, oh, I like the chunky men's watches, there are beautiful watches out there for you. You just have to find them. And I will do part of the job and find some and review them here. That's it for this time. I'll see you next time, and keep on telling time. Watch Whimsy. Like. Subscribe. Ring that bell.